she'll threaten me. If you don't do this or that, then I'm gonna call your PO.
You got one more time to hit me, Danielle. You got one more.
I ran out 4 times in one day. And the cops brought me back every time. She wants me to be sent away. You want me just as bad, put me in jail.
So Danielle, I'll remind you, she's 14 years old. That was her mother that she was fighting with. I have her father with me. We're Skyping. Ira is here. Ira, thank you so much for coming on. I absolutely appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. When you hear that and watch that video, your daughter fighting with her mother, talking about how she can just go out and steal cars, what impact does it have on you right now hearing that?
Well, for many years, I did not know about that behavior. I was alienated from everything in Danielle's life, from education to her problems. And when I find out and I see that stuff and hear that stuff and read police reports, it's horrible that I wasn't part of this child's life to maybe prevent this years ago so she didn't act that way. It's not normal behavior. Danielle's been exposed to things that no child or any person should ever be exposed or do in their lifetime.
How did you find out, and at what age was she when you found out what she was going through and how she was acting?
I first found out when she was young, I guess, end of 12, 13, when one of Barbara's ex-boyfriends, the mother, reached out to me and told me about the problems going on with Danielle, about school, about getting kicked out, the fights, disrespecting her mother. And then after that, when I was able to meet Danielle for the first time and spoke with her and her mother and a friend, I was able to absorb a lot more of what was happening. And I was very upset.
And what were you upset about?
I was upset that, number one, she wasn't going to school. Number two, of her drug use, of her crimes, the people she was hanging out with, the amount of times police were involved in her life. I was upset that there was no progress for Danielle to get better, and I tried to intervene at that time.
Who were you upset at?
Upset a few things. Number one, of the mother failing to parent this child in an appropriate manner of what society and what a good parent believes a child should be raised to do. So that was number one. Number two, I was upset with myself because this is my child, and even though the mother tried to keep me away, or actually kept me away, not tried to, or kept me away all these years, and if I would have known this, like I said, I should have intervened prior. And I'm also a little upset with the law enforcement aspect. How does a child run away 4 times in one night and return her back to the home where she runs away from? Obviously, there's a problem with the home environment, and law enforcement at that time should have and could have intervened in different manners.
So let me ask, Ira, is it Danielle's fault that she's this way, or your fault and her mother? I've never, it's just so amazing when I see mothers fighting with their children. Like, I mean, it's just so crazy to see something. Why would a mother fight her child?
Because obviously she failed to be a parent with love and care and emotion and doing the right things. It's obviously Barbara's built up frustration throughout the years that she cannot control Danielle. And so instead of redirecting her anger and frustration on Danielle, she should have focused time on maybe having me as the father in her life, and she wouldn't have gotten to that point. Look, there's one horrific video out there that probably everybody saw of Barbara beating Danielle, pulling her hair, smashing her head to the ground, into the wall. And that was not the first time, as per friends and family have told me, that domestic violence has been an issue in that home prior to that incident.
So were you and Barbara, her mother, married when she was born, or was she born out of wedlock?
She was born out of wedlock.
And so you were dating her mother and got her pregnant. Why did you guys get married after you found out that she was pregnant?
Because it wasn't a planned pregnancy, and our relationship was kind of rough at the time. And since Barbara's family have gone out and gotten married after they've gotten their others pregnant, Barbara thought that if she would entrap me, that I'd turn around and marry her, and that wasn't the case.
So Barbara wanted to marry you, but you didn't want to marry her?
No, that's correct.
That's correct. And so what prevented you from being with your daughter while she was growing up? What stopped that?
Well, after Danielle was born, I realized that there was a responsibility that I had. Number one, I was adopted at 10 months old, so I didn't know my biological parents. I was able to find out who they were many years later. And I knew I had a responsibility. I had a responsibility emotionally, financially, to be part of this child's life. And I tried, and it didn't work in the beginning. And then I unfortunately had to obtain an attorney. And you know, with the battles these days, with the time at court, the motions, the money, you know, at times it's not the best interest of the child. It's the best interest for everybody else but the child. So when I was able to get visitation, Barbara refused to attend, and then she continued on the attacks towards my wife, towards my place of employment, towards my family, towards my biological family. And she was so toxic to me.
One more segment with Ira. This is so important, folks. The worst thing that can happen to children is not to have their fathers in their lives. Never mind the color, male and female. They need their fathers. Ira, I know that in this country today, the courts are against fathers. They're against men. And most of the time when men try to get their children during a divorce or whatever, it's almost impossible today to do that. And so from what I read, you went through that process of trying to get your daughter. Am I right about that?
That's correct.
And in short, tell us again what happened once you tried to get her and what made you give up.
Well, after Barbara was difficult to deal with and seeing Danielle, like I said, I obtained an attorney, which I think it's horrific these days that a father has to spend thousands of dollars just to be part of their child's life.
Yeah.
Legal fees, it is ridiculous. At the end, really, the only winners out of this are the attorneys. So we tried. Like I said, we tried to set up visitation. And during that time, the attacks from Barbara against me and my wife, my family, my career, we had to look at the fact that let Barbara raise Danielle for a period of time, maybe get her removed from this part of her life of so much anger, and maybe she'd go on a good path with Danielle. But she didn't. She continued to attack and attack. And I had to look at, number one, I had a beautiful wife. Unfortunately, during this stressful time, my wife had a miscarriage because of Barbara's antics. Barbara just doesn't stop with just me. It is a realm of documentation, of threats, of harassment towards family, friends, and career that I had to look that I needed to have a healthy life with my wife and to raise a family.
Yeah. I went through the same thing with my son. I tried to get him. I got a lawyer. His mother moved to New York, and after a while, I just couldn't afford to continue, so I had to let go as well. At one time, your daughter had your last name, I read. Did the mother change the last name? Or?
No. Let me explain something. There's no such thing as Danielle Bregoli legally. Her name is Danielle Marie Peskowitz. Barbara even tried to go back to court a few years ago to have her name changed to Bregoli, and the judge denied it. So right now, there is absolutely no official local state government documentation that says her name is Danielle Bregoli. It's Danielle Peskowitz. And basically, Barbara is just not listening to the court orders because Barbara feels she has no accountability towards anybody. So she never changed her last name.
And is it true that you had visitation rights at one point, and she moved away, the mother moved away with her daughter?
Well, apparently there was a time that Barbara wanted to go to New York for a little while with family. And I thought that was the best interest for Danielle, to maybe have Barbara remove, go to New York, live with her grandparents, her aunts or whatever, and to remove away from her proximity to us, which apparently she did for a period of time. I'm not sure what period of time. But then, while she was up there, I want to explain something to you, which is very interesting. A part of her attacks is that all the courts had jurisdictions here in Palm Beach County. Danielle was raised in Palm Beach County in Florida, and Barbara took it upon herself to petition the courts, the Department of Revenue in New York, to go after me for failing to pay child support. Now, New York had no jurisdiction to do so, and Florida had all the jurisdiction. I had an income deduction order that came out of my paycheck. So I had to pay $500 for an attorney to go to New York and tell them, knock this off and stop threatening that you're going to garnish my wages. This is a form of harassment towards Barbara. So that's another thing, that I'm paying $500 for absolutely nothing on top of child support. So we could save on hours on the attacks that she's done.
So, Ira, let me ask, because of time, we ran out of time here with you. How do you feel, and how did you feel about losing your daughter and knowing what she was going through? And the reason I asked that, because I suffered when I wasn't able to get my son. It was very, very painful. And over the last 27 years, I've talked to truckloads of men of all races, not all, most races, who have suffered. And in this society, people don't seem to realize that when men lose their children, it's very painful for them. Was it painful for you?
It was extremely painful, and it still is painful.
Yeah.
My wife feels the pain. My family feels the pain. My two boys feel the pain, because not only is Barbara alienating Danielle from me, but she's alienating Danielle from her other extended family, that has good values, that want to do things right for Danielle. Listen, this is not easy for me. You know, I function. I have lovely two boys and a wife that help me move forward. But to have a child out there who has been altered to believe that I've abandoned her, or that I'm just this horrible individual, it's disgusting. And to hear these things in court also are just disgusting.
So, in the 2 minutes we have here, what is your relationship with Danielle now? Have you guys talked or seen each other?
Well, a few months ago, me and her were able to talk on the phone and started to build a relationship. And every time it was getting closer, Barbara and or her management team removed Danielle's phone from her, and then eventually changed her number. I was able to get her number again, and then what did they do? They changed her number again. Now, they say that I was harassing her, but we talked for over a half hour one time, 20 minutes another time, and if we were having a bad conversation, you think that lengthy conversation would take part? And I've got, just to prove them wrong, that I unfortunately had to go to my cell phone company and get documents to show the time that we were talking. But yeah, we were bonding.
So did you apologize to her for, first of all, having a baby out of wedlock and what her mother had put her through, and you're not being there for her? Did you apologize to her?
I apologized to her, and I wanted to go to therapy with her, because I thought that was the most important thing. Not just to meet on the street corner and say, hey, here's your dad after 13 years. She had a lot of anger and a lot of frustration, a lot of resentment towards me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do it the right way, but the mother prevented that.
You know, I've been telling guys over the years, it's best to wait until you get married before you even have sex, because this can happen and the children end up suffering for it. It's hard enough today being married and having children with husbands and wives, and to have children out of wedlock is evil, because the children suffer for it. Ira, I appreciate you coming on. We're going to keep, do you think you're going to eventually see her? I mean, maybe after she get older or something?
As long as she's in the environment with her mother and the management team right now, she is so alienated and brainwashed that I don't know if I will ever be able to see Danielle. I mean, we've been battling in court. It's been going on. The longer and longer she's in that environment, the harder and harder she's going to be part of my life.
Ira, thank you so much. My heart breaks for Danielle and children who have to go through this with their parents. I really wish you well, and thanks for coming on.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Thanks for having me.
All right.